All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start the Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting now, February 5th, 2019, actually. Will staff please call the roll?
Stacy Gloss,
Present.
Dustin Allred,
Here.
Claire Johnson, Todd Rusk, Andrew Stumpf,
Here.
Morgan White,
Here.
Tesfaye Walde Medine, Scott Tess,
Here.
Maddie Garbaz.
Here.
We're here.
All right, thank you very much. We do have a quorum this evening. We did not send the minutes from the December meeting in our packet this week, so we will handle that at the next meeting. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? I'm going to actually change up the order. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to remind her to change the order. That's all.
Yeah, we're going to change the order of the presentations this evening just to accommodate some folks' schedules in the room. So first, under the presentations, we will hear from Lisa Merrifield, who is working with the Illinois Extension, then from Nancy Holm, and then we'll do the staff report this evening. And those should be the only changes. Okay, at this time, we would like to welcome public input from members of the audience. I'd like to welcome students from the U of I this evening, and we look forward to hearing your words and your thoughts this evening. Okay, great. Is there a sign-in sheet at the table? Is it in back or at that table? Can we bring it up to the table, please? Okay, we'll just remind members of the public just to fill out your name and I think email address on the form as you come up to provide public input. And if you would just introduce yourself, then we would love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, so my name is Kayla Myers. I am a student at the U of I. I'm pursuing a master's in landscape architecture. I would like to specifically discuss Climate Goal 4, Adapt to Climate Change Impact. Specifically within Action 3, include more pollinator-friendly spaces in city landscapes. I am concerned that some efforts at this are still too heavily focused on aesthetics. The pollinator pockets I've seen around town seem too small, too isolated, and most of them seem to use annual plant cultivars which have little to no nectar to offer insects. They also offer nothing to the larval stages of caterpillars which need native foliage to consume, and many species of native pollinators have evolved in conjunction with our native species of plants, and therefore they prefer those and need those to thrive. I am also concerned that many nurseries treat their plants with systemic neonicotinoid pesticides prior to sale. This is a very common practice, and if the city is buying plants treated in this way, they are attracting pollinators to plants which are toxic. Second, on Philo Road, I was part of the crew responsible for maintaining that landscape. We would be directed to spray insecticide on plants which showed insect damage. These pesticides are also toxic to pollinators as well as pests, and their use should be ceased. Also, as I said, caterpillars and other insects, which are crucial components of avian diets, need to eat plants. We have to allow for some damage to occur. Therefore, I suggest using more of an IPM strategy, or integrated pest management strategy, for dealing with pest species numbers in a non-harmful way. Third, I am concerned about the lack of overall biodiversity targets in the Climate Action Plan. Illinois has lost over 95% of natural land cover since European settlement, and we have seen precipitous declines in most animal species, from insects to birds to large mammals. Insect biomass has decreased up to 80% worldwide, and non-domesticated animal species have lost 60% or more of their individuals. I would like to know what the city is doing to address biodiversity loss. Stemming the loss of our fellow animal life forms is critical to keeping the planet's ecosystems from crashing. I appreciate the existence of this committee, and I understand that you have a lot of issues to consider already. Yet I feel more attention has to be given to supporting the animal and plant life, which makes this community unique and which we absolutely need to support if we wish to keep this place inhabitable in perpetuity. Thank you.
Kayla, thank you so much for your input. I think that we have maybe a minute for comments or questions from members of the commission, if there are any.
I'm wondering, Scott, if you have any comments from the perspective of the city and maybe from the arborist or other folks that are working on the planning side of this.
Sure. Thank you for your comments. I just want to mention or respond to a few things I noted. Neonicotinoids, we've brought that up to the Arbor Division. They've looked at the chemicals they use and have concluded that none of what they're using contain neonicotinoids. But I think you bring up a good point. We do have some landscapes that are managed by vendors, and so we can go one step further and look at what they're using. The easiest or the cleanest way anyway to manage that from the city's perspective is to write it into a contract. When that contract is rebid, then we know what happens and it's required. So I'm making a note on that. You mentioned the seeing a lot of horticultural varietals of native plants rather than the native the native variety in a lot of plantings. And I'm curious, and you use the term lots of pocket parks around town. I'm curious where you were thinking of, and I ask because I'm wondering if you're looking at properties that the city doesn't own or maintain.
So I don't know who owns or maintains them, but it's just, especially along roadways, I'll see these little tiny garden spaces. A lot of them seem to use different species of salvia and snapdragons, and then they have the little pollinator pocket sign on there. So that's what I was thinking of.
I don't think the city has any pollinator pocket signage on any of their landscapes, so that's probably an indication it's not ours. We do, the Arbor Division does use a lot of cultivars of native varietals, especially for instance, things like purple coneflower. The native varietal is, and you might know this better than me, 3-4 feet tall. And when you have a little planting strip and you put, one prairie plant that's used to being held up by a bunch of other prairie plants, they fall over. And in terms of other landscape goals, that's problematic. So then they end up buying cultivars of, say, purple coneflower that are shorter that stand up straight. Same with some of the prairie grasses. That's some of the thinking, but I take your point. And you mentioned biodiversity goals, not something we addressed in the climate action plan. I'd love to explore that further. And there is some, there's a reoccurring UN conference that's in different cities every year, specifically about biodiversity in cities. Normally, the traditional perspective is that's for parks and preserves, but they're talking about how that can be achieved within cities, and I think that's fascinating. But it's not something that we've dug into yet, so it's something to explore.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be willing to leave your comments with Amanda, or
I-
would you prefer to email them? Morgan, how do you want to handle that?
I asked them to, everyone brought a printout, so we could leave one copy here.
Excellent, thank you.
And they're just going to put them in the pile before they leave.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tanmay Takle, and I'm a senior studying technical systems management at the University of Illinois. So I want to talk about the Urbana Climate Action Plan in regards to how it ties back with the student community on campus. I believe there have been attempts, and several successful ones too, to work with the student community, and I wanted to, recommend / follow up on a few of these attempts. So there's a few organizations on campus that have attempted to work with. One of them was Business and Environmental Responsibility. I think they had a project which had something to do with performing energy analysis on buildings in Urbana and maybe optimizing them. But I think that project never took off, and I I think it was with the city of Urbana, and I don't know who the contact was, but that fell through. So I am concerned as to why that didn't happen. Was that an accountability issue with the student organization, and how could it be improved? On whose end could it be improved? In addition, for meeting goal 1, which is reducing the emissions from energy use, Illinois Solar Decathlon is another organization on campus which has students with expertise in sustainable built environments that work to build and design net zero energy efficient sustainable homes. So they work for a U.S. Department of Energy competition to do this, but they have plenty of students who are also interested in helping out towards sustainability and the built environment through any way they can. So that would be another organization I would highly recommend reaching out to. If that is an option, then please feel free to reach out to me. I am in touch with them. I'm involved with the project for them, so I could talk to the right people and put you in touch with the right people. So I guess these 2 goals mainly deal with engaging, which is goal 5, and then and also reducing the emissions from energy use. I deviate a little bit from my written script here, and I did not see anything in the climate action plan that addressed food security specifically, and I know there was feedback being sought after on this. Another campus organization which has been working towards increasing food security has been Project for Less, and I think it's a very recent organization, found sometime in 2018, and they're still functioning, but I can get in touch with them if needed. They worked with, I think, the Wesley Food Center and the Y on campus to pick up excess food and redistribute it to people in need. So if there's any way in which the city of Urbana would like to help out with that, or if there's any way in which they could be of help to the city of Urbana, that would be another organization to reach out to. But apart from that, it would be really good to see parts of the climate action plan also addressing food security, because that is also a growing concern. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Maybe we have time to address one of the things that were brought up, if anyone would like to address. But otherwise, in the interest of time, I think we need to move on. Yes, Morgan.
I wanted to say I saw one of the new council members is specifically interested in addressing food deserts in Urbana. So while it may not have been in the climate action plan, it's clearly there, or it's all related, and I think we can look into possibilities of that interaction. I think that's Project for Less. Right?
Project for Less, the 4.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if I may, just maybe as one person writes their name, the next person could come up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Gramman. I'm a master's student studying architecture here. I also went here for my undergrad and lived in Urbana for 3 years during that time. So I'm very familiar with both living in residence halls, and I lived in a sorority here as well for a few years. And right now I'm the house director at one. And I work closely with our food service provider and our catering company, and have noticed that our food waste, it just has to go to the trash by law, and that's very concerning because I see how much meals we per week are required to make and how much to cook and how much just gets thrown out, or how the girls that don't eat their food on time, they'll just throw it away. And I see that's a huge concern amongst the whole, not only dorms, but in sororities and larger housing units. There's so much food waste. So I was hoping, and I see it's on the agenda today, so hopefully it'll be addressed, but in the food collection, that you'll think about the different housings and maybe being able to work with, like I personally work with Hendrick House, but work with them and other major catering companies around the area, especially around the campus area, to be able to pick up the food and the food waste, because it's just an incredible amount on a daily basis. So Yeah, that was it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So this food waste survey is going out.
Yeah, I don't want to, because we have some speakers that are, after public
Yeah.
comment, I'll save that for then, but
Yeah.
just to say that we are evaluating food scrap collection.
And there's an opportunity for more input, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and just.
So stay
the-
tuned.
The loss statement, I hadn't heard, you said it's required to go in the trash by law.
Yeah, like it can't
So
be
this is-
donated
this is
or
not
anything
something I
by
knew
like
about.
by food, like the health code. They have to throw it away by a certain
Okay.
date and it has to be rid of off the premises.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Brent Panazzo. I am a master's student at the University of Illinois in the Urban Regional Planning program. My comment is mainly focused on the adapting to the climate change section of the Climate Action Plan. And I thought that section did not give enough emphasis on addressing the threat of floods and increasing flood risks with climate change, especially in the Midwest region that we are in. I did see that it said that the Illinois State Water was doing a water survey. I would be interested in seeing what they come up with. I don't know if the commission plans to send an update once they get results from that. But in regards to that, I would like to see more of a mention of how to deal with flood water and runoff water quality, possibly addressing green infrastructure and how we can use green infrastructure projects to better manage stormwater, improve runoff quality, and also produce wildlife benefits. And I thought that went well with the rest of the categories under that section, was with natural pollinator species and the water, so it could be all combined into more of a comprehensive plan using native plant species, green infrastructure. And lastly, I thought that possibly to show off the capabilities of this, the city could do a comprehensive project on their own land, and that these types of projects done by the city send good signals to the community, and they send a signal stating their commitment and just like displaying their commitment to follow through on their climate action goals. And thank you.
Brent, thank you for your comments. I am just wondering about I think the stormwater management plan and how that addresses a couple of these comments. But I understand your points, and with sustainability, these issues are connected. And so we have talked about some stormwater in some meetings before, but Scott could probably describe more about what's in the plan and what topics of sort of sustainability have made their way into that plan.
Sure. Thanks for your comments. With respect to flooding, it's a concern I share. Urbana-Champaign is in a fairly decent position. We're kind of it doesn't look like it, but we are sort of at the top of a hill. We're at the headwaters of, I think, 3 different watersheds. So we aren't in a terrible position. As you pointed out, we had some comments about the Illinois State Water Survey updating their design storm standards, which are referenced by cities, including Urbana, when they require stormwater management for new construction. And so the Water Survey is presently doing that study, and it should be published this calendar year. So that's good. That's going to result in a right sizing, whether it be up or down, in pretty much everybody's stormwater management requirements, retention requirements for future construction. The rest of your comments, I think, can be wrapped up as Stacy suggested. We're working to procure a firm to create a stormwater master plan for the city, and we have specifically recruited firms that have experience with green infrastructure. That's going to be a component.
All right. That's good to hear. Thank you.
I would just generally also throw out, I think this come up a couple of times already, but, you know, I think there's opportunities to engage. And so, you know, if you see things that are lacking that could use some work, you know, there is room to work together on that kind of stuff. We can't do it alone, though. So anyway, feel free. Yeah, keep in touch.
Hi. Hi, my name is Jingyi Li, and I'm a master's student here for landscape architecture. Well, today I'm going to make some comments about how to reduce our carbon emissions. And as a student here, I have noticed that there are something really doing harm to reduce carbon emission. And I have provided several possibilities to deal with that, and I will appreciate if our government can think about that. Well, the first problem is that one-time utilization and no limitation for plastic bags and dishes. And the solutions, maybe the first one is charge reasonable fees for plastic bags in supermarket or shopping mall. In that case, people may think carefully about how many bags they actually need and when checkout, then take as less as bags they can. Or even next time, they can bring their own bags instead of using the plastic bags. And maybe the second solution is that advocate fast food restaurants use long-time instead of one-time dishes and cups, such as porcelain or glass. Try to limit it or prohibit using plastic containers because, on the one hand, less use means less produce, and we all know that plastic is made from gasoline. And on the other hand, when food is in high temperature, it may speed up the releasement of toxic elements in plastic that will negatively affect people's health. And the second problem is that high car growth, even with basically steady population in our town. Maybe the first solution is that add more buses in different traveling lines, especially in somewhere far away from our universities. And based on research, keep on buses on Sunday to some popular places where people tend to visit on Sunday. And high car growth means that there's still a lot of needs for private cars. Then means that our public transportation still needs to update and be more convenient for people to use. And maybe the second solution is to enhance sharing bag policy, which is already applied in our town, but not frequent or convenient enough. The detailed actions may contain adding more bag stations for people to rent or return, advertising intensely for letting more people notice them and having a knowledge how to use them, or releasing awards or gifts such as reading bag for free or having discount when someone have read enough mails using these bags, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're talking about the bicycle program. I think that you mentioned bike stations, and I just wanted to clarify the bicycle sharing program we have on campus doesn't have any stations.
Yeah.
So the way to use it, because you said help people understand how to use it, I'm going to take this opportunity. So you download the app, and you sign up for an account, which you log into the app. And then you walk up to a bike and scan it, and it'll unlock the bicycle. You ride it, and then when you're done, you lock it with your hand and leave it in an appropriate place, such as a bike rack. And so it's point A to B, not A out and about back to A. So it's a system that doesn't need more stations. But outside of our Champaign-Urbana area, a lot of bike sharing does need stations, and so it's a very good point.
Thank you. Anything
Thank you
else?
very much.
Okay.
I believe that we only have time for one more, well, just one more speaker, so the person who's about to speak, before I do need to stop public comment to just accommodate the schedule of a presentation that we're having this evening, but depending on the schedule, is that okay, Maureen? Okay, because we could start public comment back up after that presentation if there are a couple more.
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, good evening.
Hi, I'm Isha Kulkarni. I am an exchange student at the University of Illinois. I study civil and environmental engineering. At my home university, I was involved with a lot of sustainability initiatives, and one of the most prominent one was related to waste management. So I read through the Climate Action Plan, and I believe that the City of Urbana and the Sustainability Advisory Commission are working on a lot of initiatives to tackle climate change at the city scale, but one area that could use more improvement is waste management. It is possible that it is out of your jurisdiction, but during my last few months living in 2 different locations in Urbana, I noticed that other than on prominent campus locations such as the Elena Union, there is generally a lack of waste segregation across the city. It is unclear how this mixed waste is collected in bins and then processed, but I certainly think that improved waste management will only be beneficial for the community and the city as a whole. Starting off, I would propose installing bins that separate waste into compost, recyclables, and trash. Ideally, these would come with labels that explain what kind of waste goes into each section. I would also recommend that residents of Urbana are also urged to do the same, possibly with some added incentive. This could tie into collection of food waste in general that can then be utilized for creating compost for the community. This generally improves community initiatives as well, like gardening and so on. Organizing awareness workshops for city residents and coordinating with campus-based student groups that are also interested in waste management, that could also go a long way to help tackle climate change at the city level, because waste management is an important part of it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? I would encourage, if this is something that you are interested in and passionate about, that we could put you in touch with the recycling coordinator for the city to perhaps work together on a project. I don't know what that would look like, and she's not here, so I don't want to volunteer her to do a project that she hasn't agreed to, but it's certainly something to look into. And thank you.
Thank you.
Just really, really quickly, everybody who, I think the table out there has the U-Cycle brochure, right? Is that what you were going to say? No, usually there's a table right outside this door on your way out. There's, I'm pretty sure there's a stack of U-Cycle brochures that shows everything that's recyclable for the City of Urbana locations.
Okay, thanks to all for your public comment this evening. Next, I would like to call up Lisa Merrifield, who works for the Illinois Extension Office on a new community sustainability initiative, and we look forward to hearing from you. I hear that you have a PowerPoint this evening.
I do.
Okay, great.
Yep. All right, I just have a few slides. Thank you for having me this evening. So as mentioned, I'm with University of Illinois Extension, and I joined Extension in about June with the decided purpose of bringing Extension together to work on sustainable community initiatives. University of Illinois Extension does a number of things, and most often we think of like Master Gardeners and 4-H, but we also have a cohort of people who work on community development and sustainability issues, or community development and economic development issues. And then across programs, we work on all kinds of sustainability issues. And I think you've got a handout in your materials this evening that outlines the depth and breadth and some of the folks who are working throughout the state to improve our sustainability. So we work at statewide level, which is largely where I am. I'm on campus, and I work with kind of across the state. There are people who work with regional and local officials within their counties. And for this group, Ryan Pankow is the person who has joined this committee and would work with the local area. We also work with individuals and homeowners to help with a variety of programming. And then, of course, K through 12 education, because we need to make sure that we are training up the next generation. So in my initial foray in extension, I've done a lot of work to kind of pull together this cohort of people across our disciplines and across our focus areas. The chief initial project within Extension is to make sure that we as actors and communities are really interacting with campus and with faculty who are doing research so that we can help guide that research into real practical applied applications. And we've had some initial successes, and I think there are many faculty who are really interested in making sure they're addressing real concerns for real people in Illinois. So I'm excited about that. To talk about a couple other things we've been working on, I had previously worked with the Illinois EPA on the nutrient loss reduction strategy, working on keeping nitrogen and phosphorus out of water. And a lot of that is ag, but there's a significant portion that is related to urban stormwater. And so one of the things that I've been looking at in the past few months is what kinds of programs are in which cities, to try and get a better idea of where our bright spots are in Illinois and where our spots, maybe there's some work to be done.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
no
I'm
worries.
just really curious if you could tell us more about what an MS4
I'm sorry.
permit is.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
So, municipal separate storm sewer systems is a way that when the water drains off the streets, it goes into a municipal separate storm sewer system. And those are permitted by US EPA. See, I live in this world, so thank you for backing me up. So there are also communities that have what's called a combined sewer overflow, which is permitted through a different mechanism. And so I'm interested in looking throughout the state and trying to get this idea of what's happening where, and doing some case studies on communities that are doing really innovative things and helping to pull together maybe communities who are looking to do more things but don't have the resources. So this map is a map of all of the permitted, active municipal separate storm sewer systems in the state. So there are 379 active permits. There are 278 communities that have waivers, which means they're small or they don't contribute or they are encompassed by some other larger mechanism. And from this, Illinois EPA was able to give me access to 291 reports. So I don't have everybody's report, but we have a pretty good sampling. And we're looking through them to identify who's doing rain garden programs, who's doing rain barrel programs, who's got street sweeping programs, and sort of aggregate that data. It's a fairly coarse look. It's a qualitative look, but we're, I think, coming up with some interesting thoughts and ideas on what's happening where. This initial data will go into Illinois EPA's nutrient loss reduction biennial report, but going forward will hopefully help us identify needs and gaps in programming and actors who can help fill those needs and gaps. All right. Some other things we've gotten started recently. I've been working with Scott to try and rekindle what's known as the Prairie Sustainability Network. That is a group of sustainability professionals within municipalities around the state. Right now, there's not a professional network of those folks, so there's not a good dialogue about what works and what doesn't, and it's hard to kind of cohesively work on larger projects. So we're trying to bring that group back together. It was active for a few years, it has lapsed, and bring that group back together to make sure that throughout the state we are sharing good ideas and needs, and make sure that we're communicating well. A second piece I am increasingly interested in is the issue of conservation finance. This is a relatively new field of research. We know about funding through bond issues and through grants, but there are some folks who are starting to think about, are there more innovative ways, both simple to complex? There is a fair amount of wealth that is going to soon transfer from older Americans to younger children who in demographic studies have different kinds of ideas about how we might invest in our society, and they tend to be more sustainability focused. And so this area of conservation finance is looking at things like that, and how do we engage people with money to invest and philanthropic desires to do local good and help fund some of these projects. There are a variety of other kind of market-based forces that could be interesting, and then I'm starting to investigate in the hopes that Extension can help communities really engage in some kind of out-of-the-box thinking. One study I've recently heard about in Wichita, Kansas, they needed to mitigate pollutants coming out of their pipes in the city. But what they discovered was that it was much less expensive to mitigate on the ag land than it was to mitigate within the city. So they have formed a rural-urban partnership to mitigate pollutants upstream, to pay farmers to do things like cover crops and that kind of thing that eliminate pollutants upstream, and so that then the city has to do less, and that's a cheaper option. So that conservation finance piece, I think, is interesting, and I hope will be beneficial to cities. I'm working on that over the next year, and hope to have something that we can really talk to communities about.
Do you have any other examples of I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there could be a lot of other. Anyway, I'm just curious if there are other I'm trying to wrap my head around what exactly
What that means.
is conservation finance. And
So-
so you gave this one example of a partnership, but
Mhm.
you were talking about some others. Anyways, I just wonder if you have something more.
Partnership, there's the philanthropy piece. There's, the way it's been described to me, there's kind of a scale of, easy to difficult. There are things like some communities have taken on doing, like when you go into a store, will you round up to the nearest dollar, and that money will go towards habitat restoration or, some other kind of project. There's something called impact bonds or impact investing, where a community might put out a bid to do a stormwater project, and the contractor isn't paid for implementing whatever they propose, but based on the success of that. So if they're able to reduce, if you're trying to reduce phosphorus runoff or something, if they're able to reduce phosphorus by a certain level, they get paid a certain amount. And so it is then a different way of thinking about how a contractor might work. Washington, D.C. Waters has done a lot of this in their green infrastructure implementation. It's still early on. I mean, these are fairly new concepts. I'm going to a boot camp this summer, which is kind of a think tank of people thinking about this stuff, and I will have more at that point. I'm also working regionally on the Extension Water Network, and so we are trying to think about this as a region as well. But again, it's just getting started. But I think there's something there, and I'm hoping that can be a role Extension can play in helping communities enact some of the good stuff we want to do, but raising taxes and doing it in traditional ways is not an option. So does that help? Economics of sustainability, there's a group at the University of Illinois in the economics department that is very interested in doing applied work in Illinois to help quantify the real economic impacts and benefits of sustainability practices. We put in a proposal to fund an academic effort in this area that would give students, faculty would train up the students, and then my role in Extension would be to partner them with communities who have real issues that they would like to look at. So we want to make sure that they have real world problems. Again, if that gets funded, we'll be talking to communities we work with about how we partner and how we help answer real questions. I'm also looking at assessing critical research needs. I'm trying to make sure that we are hearing communities and feeding back to campus, faculty, real-world problems, and so that we can come up with real-world solutions. So we're in the process, both in looking at our extension agents and then on the Prairie Sustainability Network side, of making sure that we are hearing what you're saying and the kinds of things that we need to be working on. And I mentioned the North Central region. This is this regional water network, of which I'm part of the leadership team. On that effort, right now, I'm really working on some diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in terms of green jobs. The National Green Infrastructure Certification Program has just is getting going. And so there has been some research around the region to indicate that there are going to be jobs in this area, but we also have research to say that water jobs tend not to be very diverse. They tend to be largely white and largely male. And what we're looking at right now is what are the barriers to making sure that we have a diverse employment cohort as these green jobs come onto the market? How do we make sure that we are, addressing underserved communities, underemployed people? So that on the regional level, that's a big effort that I'm trying to get going. We're also looking at a regional extension-wide stormwater strategic plan. There's been a little bit of work on stormwater in the region. There are lots of disparate resources, but again, we're trying to aggregate and make sure we're sharing, and that if there are good programs we can bring to our communities in Illinois, that we're talking to each other at a regional level. So those are my remarks. That's the kind of work I'm doing. I'm very interested in continuing to work with you guys and learning more about how we apply, because if we're not applying, then this is not worth it for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah.
It is clear that you are very, very busy. And if I'm not mistaken, you started this role within the last year?
So I have been working in sustainability at the University of Illinois for over 20 years.
Okay.
But I was working largely around the Great Lakes region.
Okay.
And in a different role. So I started this role in June. So,
Wow.
but I've had lots of ideas for a lot of time, and so I have some latitude now.
Congratulations on getting, hitting the road running with this. It's very
Yeah.
exciting, and it sounds like a lot of exciting things are happening with your programs. Are there any questions from the commission? Morgan?
And just for the Prairie Sustainability Network, does that have a website? Can you
Wouldn't
promote
that
it
be
right
nice?
now on
I can't right now. It's on my list, but not done.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. It will, I promise. I'm talking on Monday to the person who coordinated it previously to kind of get some feedback, and then we'll get going. It's on the list.
I had a question and a comment, not something that you would have an answer for tonight, but as you look into the barriers to cultivating a more diverse green jobs workforce, I wonder if attracting diverse body of candidates to the training and university programs might be one of the barriers to investigate.
I think that's probably very likely. Our plan is to do some focus groups so that we can really hear from people about, how do we do this? What are the real issues? Why isn't a more diverse pool not available? But that could well be the case.
Probably it'll be multiple things.
That's our thought, yeah. Yeah, and again, we're hoping that by doing some focus groups, we can identify some barriers and people who can help us fill those gaps.
Any thoughts on how many communities might be interested in the Prairie State Network?
Right now, it's just a handful, but I'm trying to reach out and broaden our scope. Part of that that look at green infrastructure practices, I'm also looking at stormwater plans and sustainability plans and trying to figure out where people are. We have a lot of representation from the Chicago area and not so much from downstate. But there are things happening downstate, so we just need to find the people.
Yeah.
Again, it's just...
One of the
We're
things that
getting
I was
moving.
thinking about is just, so we and others have climate action plans, and we have our goals, and we've done some good stuff, and we've got more ground to cover, and so we do the things that we can, and sometimes we run into a point where it's like, well, now what? And I don't know. It might be nice to think about that with other communities that are thinking about the same thing.
That's what I'm hoping. There's a national group that Scott has introduced me to that deals with this, but the barrier to entry is fairly high. It's expensive and it's fairly selective. So the discussions are happening.
What group is that? Is that ICLEI?
U.S.
Urban Sustainability Directors Network.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But my thought is that we want to have something that more people can participate in Illinois and really talk about ideas.
There's this group. They're not like a formal group, but it's like the Chicago Sustainability Task Force, something like that.
There are several. Will County has a regional group.
Yeah,
so one of our issues is trying not to reinvent the wheel.
Well, yeah. Anyway, just
Yeah.
some other models.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Do you want me to put my name down?
Oh, I don't think you have
Okay.
to. Yeah.
Thanks.
Actually, I would just like to open up public input in case anyone specifically has any questions for Lisa about the Sustainable Communities Initiative. Okay. All right. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I hope to also join the Prairie Sustainability Network and to get on your list. Okay. Nancy. Nancy will be giving us a presentation. She works with the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, which is in the Prairie Research, in the surveys, PRI.
Right.
Thank
So,
you.
good evening. I'm Nancy Holm. I'm Assistant Director at Illinois Sustainable Technology Center. I believe you all have a handout I presented. I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I was just going to talk briefly today for those who may not be aware of our organization. I know many of you on the commission actually have worked with us, but for those in the audience, I'll briefly go through who we are and what we do and how we work with communities. So first of all, for those not familiar, we're in the Prairie Research Institute on campus, which has 5 divisions. We are one of them, along with the Illinois State Geological Survey, the Illinois State Archaeological Survey, the Illinois State Water Survey, and then the Illinois Natural History Survey. So we pretty much cover all different sciences and environmental topics. So the mission for our center is to encourage and assist citizens, businesses, communities, and government agencies to prevent pollution, conserve natural resources, and reduce waste. And we do that we do a lot of applied research. We work on real-world problems. We have technical assistance providers that go out to communities and businesses. And then we have information services where we can supply information to those who have inquiries about different regulations or different topics of interest related to pollution prevention, water and energy conservation, or materials recycling and reuse. This past year, our center did some strategic planning, and we came up with 4 main research focus areas, which I think fit well with anyone doing sustainability planning. We have energy as a topic, pollutants, waste utilization, and then water use and reuse. And for energy, we've actually done some work on enhancing wastewater to energy with a project where we're growing algae at wastewater treatment plants, and those algae take up the nutrients so that it cleans the water quality, and it can also take out some other contaminants, some of the emerging contaminants. So we actually pilot that here in Urbana at the wastewater treatment plant. And we hope to pilot that in other communities. We're also working in the Department of Defense to pilot that at Army bases, because it's a way to take out those nutrients, which I think was talked about several other people, to prevent them from getting out in the environment and causing lower water quality. Other ways we work with energy, we're helping the Illinois Department of Transportation grow specific types of grasses along the highway right-of-ways. So this might be something you want to use here in Urbana. And then harvesting that, because they have to cut the grass anyway, but if you're growing certain species, you can harvest that and then use that biomass to turn into fuels or heat or power. So those are,
Nancy,
again, a type
can I
of
interrupt
project
in the
we'll
middle
work
to ask a question about that?
Sure.
So the biomass that they're collecting from the roads, do you know where it's getting used?
I think
Or
right
if
now
it's getting used at this point, or if it's just something that could happen?
we started that pilot and first identified the best types of grasses, and now, yes, IDOT is using it in their vehicles. So they have to densify it and then they burn it, or for heating some of their buildings. So that's 2 ways it can be used. Another area we work in, which relates to communities, is contaminant research and engagement. We're looking a lot at different pollutants that could be in, for example, wastewater treatment plants. We've done studies at the wastewater treatment plants in Urbana and Champaign. We've looked at contaminants in groundwater, runoff of some of the pesticides or some of the other ag chemicals from agricultural land, just to examine their fate, transport, and what effects those might have on aquatic species. We've also been doing a lot of work recently on groundwater contaminants with microplastics, or in rivers and streams, and some of the perfluorinated compounds, PFASs, which you maybe have seen in the news recently. A lot of the Army bases, including the Rantoul, former Air Force base, I should say Air Force bases, have some contamination with perfluorinated compounds that were used there in firefighting foams. And so we're working with Rantoul on some projects up there. We also do a lot of work with waste utilization. For if the person might still be here who asked about plastic bag recycling, there's actually a bill that we're working with. The legislature right now is introducing for a plastic bag fee across the state of Illinois. So we'll keep you posted on that. So we do some plastic recycling, so we're very interested in that, because we take a lot of the hard to recycle plastics, such as yogurt containers, etc., and can make those either into fuel or use them in combined heat and power. And we have a project that we might be piloting at our facility where we hope to we could heat the building with waste plastics. So again, we'll keep you informed of that, because it might be something that we might want to work with some of your buildings in this community on trying that option also. Another project we did with the Abbott Power Plant on campus was look at carbon dioxide utilization and reduction by capturing the CO2 as it comes out of the stack and then routing that so it doesn't get into the atmosphere, and then trying to use that as can be used in refrigeration or other uses we're looking at. And then one also that fits in with Urbana and the large solar installations that you have coming online. We're working on a project on solar panel recycling initiative, because right now there's really in the state there are no solar panel recyclers. So we're working with EPA and some of the installers, et cetera, and the state and National Solar Energy Association to come up with a plan for Illinois, and in order to promote recycling, reuse, repurposing of solar panels, because as you may be aware, in the next 10 to 20 years, there's a lot more solar going to be installed across the state, and we want to be sure, because we work on pollution prevention, that these just don't end up in landfills, taking up landfill space, as well as maybe having some of these resources that we would rather harvest for reuse, such as the aluminum or the glass or some of the metals. So that's a big initiative we're working on. We just had a meeting yesterday, and we're hoping something will develop and get introduced in this year that we can tell people about the best way we're going to be establishing a network for recycling here in Illinois. And then lastly, we do work on water use and reuse, some new membrane filtration, et cetera, for companies so they can reduce the amount of pollutants that they have in their water again, so it doesn't get out in the wastewater. Then I brought up, we do have technical assistance people, and I know we've worked with Scott and Morgan some on different sustainability plans and different projects. We work a lot on cooling towers in different installations and institutes around the state, making sure for health and safety reasons they have no problems with their cooling towers. We work with industries on their processes and energy and waste reduction, and have a zero waste program, which is also interested in the composting and the food waste questions brought up before. So if people want to talk to me about what we're working on there, we can. So I think I just wanted to give a rough idea of what we do. If any of the members or audience members would like to have a copy of our annual report, I brought a few copies, or it's online. And with that, we're always happy to talk to anyone on the commission or the Urbana administrators. We work some with Courtney, the recycling coordinator. So we're happy to work with you and any other communities on helping for solutions related to sustainability. So, thank you. Any questions?
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions from the commission? Comments? Okay, we appreciate the update and your being here tonight. Thank you, Nancy. Sure. We can open the floor for public comment. If any students would like to ask a question of the presentation or about ISTC. Okay. I think they're going to be here. Well,
Do you-
Morgan, it's up to you. Yeah.
Is there okay?
I think that
comment?
there's some time. Yeah.
Do you mind giving your public comment now before you leave? Okay, please. We were trying to split it into 3 groups of 8, but there's only 22 students anyway, so. Thank you.
So, hello, good evening. My name is Robert Erbs. I am an undergraduate student at the University of Illinois in the School of Urban Planning and also Civil Engineering, and I'm also a happy resident of the city of Urbana. I just have a couple broad comments today about the SAC. And as the city of Urbana is implementing its SAC, I want to stress to the Commission that it is important to focus on implementing 1 or 2 ideas very well instead of attempting to do too much at one time. The success of the Solar Urbana-Champaign initiative shows that programs that are well thought out, well advertised, and well run are extremely effective in making real progress towards fixing climate change. It also shows that residents are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Considering the financial troubles the city of Urbana is facing, this commission should look more into implementing programs that follow the model of Solar Urbana-Champaign by making it more affordable for residents to reduce energy consumption in their own homes, which accounts for 21.8% of the total energy consumption in the United States. These improvements can include adding new insulation, replacing old windows, installing rain gardens and planting trees, and anything else that improves the energy efficiency of a home. This allows the city to continue reducing its overall carbon footprint by making relatively small investments in a community that reduce residents' energy bills and increases the equity in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Thank you for your comment. I had to smile because do less things better is like my morning affirmation. But it's a struggle. I appreciate that.
It's hard to kind of keep yourself limited.
Yeah.
Okay, again, thank you. Yes.
So, hello, I'm Bo Pang, and I'm master student of landscape architecture. And based on the goal 3, increase renewable energy purchasing and installation, I would like to share a case study I'm studying now. It's a Valid Village in New Orleans. This is an urban farm which is very sustainable with low technique urban farm, raise the vegetables and fruits for local restaurant and personal use. So there's one thing very interesting that they use the windmill to do the water pump into the field to drainage. So, and also this urban farm's dimensions is 950 feet and 1,200 feet. So the scale is very appropriate as an urban farm. Also, there's a market which can sell the fruits there to the personal use and to the, yeah. So I know like we also have a market called Harvest Market, which is also sell the local food. So I think maybe we can introduce this as a mainstream to the public, to the residential here. So that's all.
Great. Thank you for your comments. One additional store that I would just like to, if you haven't been before, the local Urbana Food Co-op Common Ground in Lincoln Square Mall. Check that out and their local produce. Oh, it's where Lincoln Square Mall is? It's across the street from
It's
here,
immediately
actually.
across the
behind
street.
us.
is a local cooperative foods, it's local
Yeah.
foods, it's a local cooperative, and it has a lot of great resources right there.
Yeah, so just for example, I was looking for what foods can we serve locally at a faith service or after a faith service that I had recently gone to. And so we had gone to the co-op and they had apples that were produced 10 miles away here locally in Urbana, and also local carrots that you can get. But anyway, so I agree, you probably, do you live in Urbana or Champaign?
Champaign.
Champaign. Check out the market if since you'll be over here for class a couple of times. But I really appreciate your comments about local food systems and how we can incorporate renewable energy into our local food systems as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that was 8. So great. Scott, will you give the staff report? Thank you.
Good evening. First, some updates on climate action plan progress. We did have a couple of late contracts signed with Solar Urbana-Champaign. We closed at 574 kilowatts of capacity on 47 sites, mostly residential, 94% residential, and 34% of those were Urbana addresses. There might have been a few that were Urbana addressed, but not actually in the city. I didn't separate those out, but it gives you a sense. We're now working with the MREA, Midwest Renewable Energy Association, again on a 4th year for Solar Urbana-Champaign. Since our last meeting, the City Council specifically approved a lease option agreement with SunPower, as well as a special use permit with SunPower to develop a solar array on the city's closed landfill. That is reliant upon the state's incentive lottery, and my understanding that lottery the first of several lotteries will occur in March. March 20th is the date I've heard, and so we'll be watching that closely to see if we're able to move forward with a project there. Moving on to water management plan. Staff has participated in interviews for consulting firms for the Stormwater Master Plan. A firm's been selected. We're still notifying all the firms of their status, but we'll be moving forward with providing a scope, negotiating a scope of that project with the vendor, and then putting them to work on the plan.
Scott, specifically, we had the conversation here about incorporating green infrastructure. And I know you said that sort of included that in your request for the vendor or the engineering firm, consulting firm. Can you share anything about how the scope would what the scope will include about green stormwater infrastructure? Do you know?
So in a general sense, what I think we're going to ask the vendor is describe types and opportunities for us to incorporate green infrastructure. We're not looking at putting green infrastructure anywhere, everywhere, all the time, no matter the price and the value that we derive from it. We're interested in zeroing in on where it's going to do the most quantity and quality good for the limited dollars that we have to invest. But it's certainly going to be integrated into the overall picture.
Scott, will it also address requirements, say in like the subdivision ordinance, or requirements of new development that have to create detention or retention as part of their projects?
Reviewing codes and statutes and ordinances is likely to be part of it. I'm trying to recall if we specifically have discussed requirements. Are you thinking for new construction? I'm not sure if we specifically discussed new construction. We have talked about engaging with a vendor on the implications of the Design Storm Standards Bulletin 70 if they come out in time for us to work with the vendor on that. And that's really going to impact new construction standards because that's what we reference. But that's a good question, and I'll make a note. And if anyone else has recommendations of or thoughts of things that maybe should be considered in that, now's a good opportunity. There will be public engagement on that plan as well, so it's not the last opportunity.
One other thing that we have talked about in the past is just the evolving nature of permeable pavement technology and, whether to apply it, where it's appropriate. And so anyways, it might be nice if there's a review on what is out there right now and any opportunities for the city to, where it might be appropriate.
I think that's the discussion we've been having, not just for permeable pavement, but all types of green infrastructure products and practices.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess you said all types.
Yeah. Where and when, right, and at what cost.
Yep, okay.
My favorite green infrastructure is trees because it takes so much of the water, right? And it has all those other benefits. So just put in there and add some trees.
So noted. Any other comments on that one? Next, we're working on developing procurement documents for another rain barrel and compost bin sale. We have done this every year for 6 or 7 years. And so we have some standardized procurement documents that we're adapting to now. So that's still under development. We normally have held that event at the parking lot to the north of here. That lot is likely being developed, so we've inquired with the Park District about moving the event to the parking lot at Anita Pervez Nature Center, so we still need to discuss that.
As these plans are underway, and as you're going to start eventually assessing vendors that apply, one issue that I have noticed with, not with the rain barrels themselves, but with the extender, and I'm sorry that I don't know what it's called, the extension tube that's supposed to come off of the
Overflow?
No, not the overflow. They've provided like a kind of a guttering system. It extends the gutter that goes then and drops down into
The
the rain
diverter,
barrel.
I think a diverter is what maybe it's called.
Could it be?
But continue, sorry.
But not there's like a thin tube that's your overflow tube, or can be if you install one.
Mhm.
But the rain barrels have come with, it's sort of like an accordion shape tube. The material on those, I noticed, breaks down relatively easily. And I don't know what attention could be paid to the quality of all of the products in the entire system that residents are purchasing. I think some folks have had to go out and repurchase some of that tubing due to failures. I think the Anita Pervez parking lot would be a good location for the collection point, although I do like it also being sort of chaotic during a farmer's market and having it be really highly visible.
Yeah, yeah. Public Works has been awarded a technical assistance grant for the Adapting Great Lakes Stormwater Systems to Climate Change Pilot Project, long name. It's a project with the University of Michigan. They are, so it's a vulnerability assessment substantially based on demographics. They have their own protocols that they use that they share to do that, and they're going to have, because they're a university and they do, everything is research based, they're going to do separate treatments for their partners. So some of the communities that have been awarded are going to get certain kind of training, others are going to get self-directed training, and then a third is going to get just print information or some arrangement like that. So we don't know exactly which treatment we're going to get, but we're going to get some assistance on developing a vulnerability assessment. This is from the orientation of stormwater and climate adaptation, but I think that the product, if it turns out to be as useful as I think it will be, could be a vulnerability assessment that is useful for any kind of impacts or considerations. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be a good outcome for us. Additional public engagement noted here. We're currently collecting and compiling information for all of our annual reporting, including greenhouse gas inventories for city facilities and operations this year, not community this year, just city facilities and operations greenhouse gas inventory for 2018 will be modeled. Public Works staff, myself and the Arbor Manager spoke at the Parkland College National Green Infrastructure Certification Program. That was held last week. It was a 5-day training. It's a national certification that has different colleges do the implementation, and that's what Parkland's role is here. Youth Cycle staff has been following Senate Bill 1597 along with the city's attorneys, And the Carry-Out Bag Fee Act, which we had an interest in, which would put a fee on any carry-out bag fee, any carry-out bags from retail establishments, did not move out of committee in the previous General Assembly. It's a new General Assembly, so there's an expectation that bill will be reintroduced. So look for that. I don't have a bill number on what it is or what it will be. I'm not sure it's been introduced yet. Staff is preparing a one-page insert to be placed in U-Cycle bills. That'll have, we're going to use up all that real estate on that paper since we're paying for it, but our primary motivation there is to share information about what's recyclable with U-Cycle, and also to direct readers to a survey gauging interest and willingness to pay for a curbside food scrap service. So that's a concept we've discussed here. There are a few cities in Illinois that have curbside food scrap collection, whereby they collect and then composts or send that material to a compost facility. We've evaluated these systems. Our next step is to determine if there seems to be some number of households that are willing to pay what it would cost to operate a system. So that's the purpose there. That's in your packet, and if you have any comments on the survey, be happy to share them with the recycling coordinator.
Are there any questions about the staff report?
Do you want us to comment on the survey now, or are we going to talk about that later?
Yeah.
There needs to be an in the first question, please.
In?
Yes. It
Tell me
says,
what
what
you
type of household do you reside? So, in what type, or in at the end? That's all. Thank you. Also, how is that going out? Is that like going to be put on people's recycling cartons, and are we talking about that?
So U-Cycle is billed in its own separate mailing once a year to single-family residents through 4 residents attached. So it's just a letter, and so we're just putting a second piece of paper in the envelope.
Will the return postage be paid?
Say again?
Will the return postage be paid?
It's an online survey.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
It's
sorry, Scott.
it's a PDF.
I thought you said it was a mailing.
Yeah, it's a PDF because I wanted to put it in your packet, but it'll be an online survey.
I want to go back to the landfill solar project. I'm wondering, was there any requirement or need to do environmental permitting for that, being at an old landfill?
This landfill is post closure. So
Post?
Post closure. So new landfills, they have their life, they close, and they enter post closure, where they have some number of years of certain prescribed activities that they have to engage in. Our landfill is older. It was subject to, only portions of it were ever subject to any environmental regulations, and those portions were subject to, in the first early iterations of regulations, were post all of that. Now we continue to do basic landfill maintenance, and we continue to collect samples from monitoring wells, and we have two different leachate pumps at 2 different locations on the landfill. So we're still doing post-closure activities, but there's no regulations.
Okay.
When I say there's no regulations, that doesn't mean anything goes. If there is a release of a pollutant from the landfill, we're still liable. There's just no prescriptive activities on the landfill.
Okay, good to know. And I guess since you're mentioning the, what pollutants do we screen for in the leachate?
It's been a while since I've looked at it. My recollection is metals.
Okay.
Metals, and I don't know about hydrocarbons.
Okay.
But we so we collect those samples, and we haven't had anything. I don't think I've ever seen anything exceed acceptable limits. The leachate that's collected goes to through the pumping system, goes to the sanitary district as well. So it goes through a wastewater treatment plant.
The reason I'm interested is just it's interesting for other potential projects. We think about other degraded sites, and so I was curious about the environmental regulations that might be associated with that, thinking about other places.
Yeah, the only active permit at the landfill is the Landscape Recycling Center's composting permit.
Oh. So, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Just real quick on the U-Cycle food scrap survey, I know it's an agenda item, but we have sort of already discussed it a bit. What's the time frame for the commission to provide feedback on the survey to Courtney, and should we just send that to you?
You can send it to me. Let me consider that question. The mailing is I think it's in March or April. Is a week reasonable? Okay, let's say a week.
Okay. On new business this evening, we have a discussion item for a future youth sustainability conference or summit or event. Wanted to start talking about it now that we're in 2019, and I just wanted to engage in some brief conversation about a youth event that could be sponsored by the city of Urbana about sustainability. So, are there any, would anyone like to kind of start off that conversation?
I'll start.
Okay.
I thought that the first one was over the top, amazing, astounding, and whatever we need to do to make it happen again, it needs to happen again. That's what I thought. I got to be there the whole day. I only helped a little bit as it was happening, as it was being organized. I kind of stayed in touch, but I didn't do a lot of, I didn't do much myself, but be there, and I was just so impressed. Maddie was one of the leaders, and it's just so cool. So I don't know what support is needed, but I think that we should definitely continue that. Does anyone want to disagree? Because I'll debate you.
I also thought that attendance was great. The speaker lineup was world class. I was really impressed. You asked, what's needed, and I think some adult sponsors to support the students, planning it is about due. I mean, we have a template, built from last year, but that'll always be needed, I think.
And I think several of the student leaders were seniors, right? So we need more student leadership as well, right? I'm kind of curious what's happened since the meeting or the actual summit. I don't know. Who could tell me that? Us.
Sure, Maddie. Thank you.
I think we've had like 1 or 2 meetings since the actual summit, and we kind of talked about more reflecting on the event, like what things went well, what things kind of went okay, where we would need to improve if we were to do this again. And I think we came up with a list. The speakers were great, but more, like focusing on what they were saying. Some people took more time than was given or recommended, and some of the stuff wasn't designed for the kids, more for adults. So we really just reflected on the event, made thank yous for all the speakers, and just kind of reflected and thought ahead.
Great, thank you. I am looking for one or two people, part of the SAC, that would like to potentially join a brainstorming committee that would be willing to spend some time working on a project like this. I was absolutely happy to act in a mentorship role to the youth as they were designing the summit last year, and I'm happy to assist again, but would also be very interested in having some additional volunteers to work on that, as well as having some folks help with some recruiting for possibly finding new high school age students and possibly a university student partner that would like to help organize the event. I don't think that decisions have to be made tonight, but know that that's out there. And I liked the event being in the fall, so planning is always good to start early for events, and so I think it's kind of appropriate that we start in the next couple of months to start talking about that. It probably won't be a standing agenda item on the SAC, but we may have some committee updates about how event progress is sort of unfolding. Okay.
The target is high school age? What's
Middle school and high school age students,
Okay.
unless the volunteers that work on the planning committee identify a different age group that they prefer.
Okay.
I'd say it's open. Okay. Are there any announcements this evening?
So I just wanted to share, in case anyone didn't see it, that the governor signed on to, I wrote down the name of it, the U.S. Climate Alliance. So our governor on January 23 sort of basically rejoined the Paris commitment for Illinois. That's how I interpret it. But it's good to have some leadership at the state that's supporting what we're doing, and I'm hoping that that leads to resources that we can benefit from. Thanks.
Are there any other announcements? Okay. There is no old business to discuss at this time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning the SAC meeting this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All right.